There we go. Excellent. Thank you. Our morning keynote speaker is Asha Curran. She is the founder and CEO of Giving Tuesday, and she serves as the chair of the board of Guardian.org and as the advisory committee co-chair for the Belfer Center for Innovation and Social Impact at the 92nd Street Y, where she was formerly the chief innovation officer. Asha is a fellow at Stanford University Center for Philanthropy and Civil Society, and Maria and Barry Beck Visiting Social Innovator at the Social Innovation and Change Initiative at the Harvey Kennedy School. She was a Tallberg SNF Eliason Global Leadership Finalist in 2021 and was named to the Nonprofit Times Top 50 Power and Influence list in, get this, 2019, 20, 21, and 22. It is my pleasure to bring up Asha Curran.
Give a little bit of your love to me.
So for those keeping score at home, originally the executive director of the Association of Development Officers, Hillary Millman, was going to do the fireside chat. She recently had to join the Witness Protection Program and could not be here today. And I know you're going to get me for that, Hillary. Anyway, so Asha, thank you again for being a part of this.
It's such a pleasure.
We are so excited, and I apologize for stalking you online for the past several months.
You did your homework. I like it.
So let's level set for a second. Can you start us off with a brief overview about Giving Tuesday movement, and well as how it started and why it started?
Sure, and I'll make it as short as I possibly can. So back at the 92nd Street Y in 2012, I was running our innovation lab, which was fairly newly established. And basically my job was to experiment with emerging digital technologies and to kind of play with the idea of community, because the 92nd Street Y is a community center, and to really start thinking about the word community as something that was global rather than just hyper-local. Not that it wasn't local, but that it was more than that. And so I ran a portfolio of programs on all different kinds of subjects. And, you know, when your mission is around community, you can get away with doing a lot of stuff, because essentially mostly everything is about community or can be tied to that. So Giving Tuesday, its inception was really just one of many programs that kind of aimed to play with these nascent technologies that at that point, you know, I don't know if you guys remember, in 2012, social media was very different than it is now. And I would say, if anything, it was kind of trite. Like, it wasn't, you know, anything like the landscape it is now. And we were kind of experimenting with, can you use hashtag? And this was the very beginning of the hashtag. I mean, so beginning that a lot of people didn't know what the hashtag was, right? They said, why is there a pound sign on this Giving Tuesday idea? Yeah. And so, like, could you use that to curate a conversation? Because that's the thing that social media really does well, right? Is that it curates interesting conversations that are easy to find, that are accessible, easy to participate in, about doing good. Like, that was really the basic idea. And it was kind of a counter-narrative to the days of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, right? Just seemed like it made a lot of sense. So at that point, it was sort of just this really fun experiment. It was the reaction to it that sort of led us to where we are today, in that it resonated really deeply with people. And there were a couple of moments that first year that were just so meaningful to me. People posting, you know, things like, I'm not rich, I don't have $1 million, but I can help change lives on Giving Tuesday, things like that. And I realized, like, oh, this is really hitting a nerve, you know? And nonprofits made some money, which was really, really lovely to see. And then, so fast forward 10 years, we just hit our 10th anniversary last year. A lot of really surprising things happened. And one of those things was that other countries started calling us and saying, can we lead Giving Tuesday in the UK, in Canada at first, and then in Brazil, in Russia, in Tanzania. These were all just the first couple of years. And what that taught me was, oh, this is not just a Black Friday, Cyber Monday idea. This is a human idea The idea, all over the world, people celebrate rituals and holidays, right? And all over the world, people are inspired by and need generosity. Both need generosity to be directed toward them, but also need to direct it toward others. And so the scale of it just started ballooning and ballooning. And so about 5 years ago, we realized that it was really its own whole thing and needed to be an independent organization. And so we spun out, and we are an independent 501c3 at this point with our own board of directors and growing staff. But the really important work happens with our leaders around the world. So we are a distributed leadership model, which means that we have leaders in 90 countries. We have leaders in hundreds of local communities, over 300 communities just in the United States, and 36 of them run by United Ways.
Wow.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes. And so all of those leaders are able to take Giving Tuesday and adapt it completely uniquely and authentically to their place, to their region, to their culture, their language, to their mission or their cause. And an increasing number of cause coalitions are also forming around many different issues and using Giving Tuesday as a platform to really take a lot of collective action around them. So that's kind of how it started and how it's going now.
Very cool. I've heard you reference so many organizations try something new on Giving Tuesday. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about some of the really cool and innovative things that you've seen organizations do on Giving Tuesday?
Yeah, so right from the very beginning, people use Giving Tuesday to experiment, and I'm a big fan of experimentation. And in running my own nonprofit, which happens to be Giving Tuesday, I really try to keep that ethos such a strong part of our culture, right? That we try things, that it's okay to fail. Like that principle doesn't only belong to the tech sector. We're not incentivized to fail as much as the tech sector is, right? We're not given billions of dollars in venture capital for wired juicers and, told that we can feel free to fail and iterate. But we need to own that because it leads to such great things. So the very first innovation, and this is actually when the United Way later replicated, was that an organization created Giving Shoes Day out of Giving Tuesday. And it just went from there. Now there's Giving Views Day, Giving Jews Day, Giving Booze Day. Like it just goes, people love rhymes. But the really interesting part of that was we then faced a decision, right? Which is, oh my gosh, like they're taking our brand and changing it. Right. Well, what do you do when you're, an institution, somebody takes your brand and plays with it? You, of course, issue a cease and desist letter. Right? You say, no, you need to use our brand guideline, our style guideline, et cetera. But we were like, this is actually awesome, right? Like, this is a really creative, really interesting campaign. It also did really well. It broke records for that organization, which was just a success. And so that was like a really important defining moment. And so from then on, we amplify and uplift all of that experimentation that plays with the name of Giving Tuesday, logo, the brand. And people have continued to do just incredible things with it. The best campaigns are the ones that don't just focus on fundraising. The secret is they still tend to make more money, right? But that really engage people in a really broad way, making people feel like they're part of work that organization is doing and part of the impact. And there are joyful and celebratory and even humorous. Those are the ones that tend to work the best. And I think Giving Tuesday has become a day where we have this permission not to focus on all the things that are wrong with the world. And we're the nonprofit sector, right? We deal with really heavy issues. It's not about ignoring that, but it is about celebrating the ability that each and every one of us has to make a positive impact.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why Giving Tuesday has gone viral, because it's part of human nature when hit to clench rather than to open up more. But that's what Giving Tuesday has done.
And we need that, right? We need those moments not just to focus on all the things that are wrong. We get slammed with that stuff every day now. So I feel like it's really deeply rewarding to see something like Giving Tuesday or any movement for good disrupting those algorithms.
So several recent studies are suggesting that the number of donors as well as donor retention rates are dropping. by as much as 6% annually, but not Giving Tuesday. Why do you think that's the case?
Complicated answer. So those trends are really concerning.
Yeah.
They really worry me. They keep me up at night.
Yeah.
And for a couple of different reasons. So the amount of money donated on Giving Tuesday in 2022 was $3.1 billion. So in context, that's more money than any major U.S. foundation, except the Gates Foundation, gives away in an entire calendar year. That's just people giving, right? That's just like everyday people like you and me giving $50, $100, right? And all of that in general operating support. Like, that's amazing, right? Like, the people come together and take this collective action, not billionaires, just regular people, and get this massive infusion of money into the nonprofit sector. But in 2022, we did see behind that big number those same concerning trends of consolidation, of slightly more money, yes, but in fewer hands. And that's those trends that we're seeing. So Giving Tuesday still saw that spike, still really amazing to see, but also had this undercurrent of reflecting those same trends that we're seeing. So that's obviously concerning because nonprofits are more in demand than ever right now, right? People are suffering, people are in need of our services, and we lack the proper resource to do those services, let alone to do all that experimentation and innovation, right, that I was talking about. My dream for the nonprofit sector is that it's so well resourced that it can focus on innovation and experimentation and collaboration rather than just getting the job done, right, and worrying about getting the job done tomorrow. So that's one reason that's really concerning, and that we are going to do everything we can to try to do our part in helping to reverse those trends. Lots of focus this year on best practices and capacity building and all the learnings that our 10 years of data have yielded. The other reason that it worries me is that, for me, the act of giving is a proxy for citizen power. Right? Giving is a really important and really undervalued metric of civic participation. When you have a community that's generous, you have a healthy community, or at least you are building a healthy foundation to build all the other healthy things on top of in that community. And if you have citizens who don't feel, for whatever reason, able to express their generosity, then you have lower agency. Right? And we don't want in this country agency consolidated into fewer hands. We want it spread out as much as possible, right? Deep into every grassroots community in this country, and indeed in the world, in all 90 countries that Giving Tuesday operates in. That is the mission of every single one of those leaders. So I think we want to do everything we can to stop that trend in its tracks this year.
So let's pivot for a little bit, because obviously this event is about leadership in all of its many forms. And I've heard you talk about radical trust when it comes to the importance of letting go as a leader, especially as it relates to the open adaptation that you were talking about before around Giving Tuesday. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Giving Tuesday's model is I'm so used to it. It's so deeply ingrained to me that it's just nothing shocking. It makes so much sense when you think about scale and all the other things. But I do always get that question, well, how do you control these leaders in 90 countries? How do you know they're not bad actors? And what if they do something terrible with the movement? Well, I can tell you that in 10 years, it's never happened. I think if you're a bad actor, then trying to con people by way of Giving Tuesday is probably the least efficient way to be a bad actor. I'm sure there's much more efficient things you can do than that. In my experience, when somebody steps forward, so we call our leaders hand raisers because we never go out and find them. That was actually a failed strategy of mine, I admit it. At one point, we had a map with pins in it so we could strategically find the right nonprofit or NGO consortium to run the movement in different countries. Failure, total failure. And the reason is that movement leaders are different species, right? You have to really get it and feel it and be willing to take on that additional significant amount of work. So our leaders come to us. They call us up and they say, we want to run Giving Tuesday in this tiny town in Alaska or Appalachia or an entire country. And we do a lot back and forth with them before we onboard them officially. But once that happens, that they co-own their part of that movement. And that's where radical trust comes in. You trust that somebody who's raised their hand to do good in the world actually wants to do good in the world, right? And is going to have that as their North Star. And that means that Giving Tuesday in every country looks totally different while being unified under the same broader vision of a more generous world, right? But what that looks like in each place is going to be different. And so you have to let go of the illusion that you can control or even want to or should control everything that's happening with your brand in a different place.
So is that radical imagination? And if not, can you explain that?
Yeah, so I use the word radical a lot.
I use amazing a lot,
this.
so it's fun.
I don't mean something extreme when I use the word radical. I actually mean the opposite. I mean like the most tiny behaviors and actions because the word radical actually means from the root. So if I talk about radical generosity, for example, I mean generosity that changes systems and communities from the very ground up. And that means that generosity penetrates our most mundane behaviors, our everyday interactions with people. Not that we're taking some grand radical gestures, right? Actually, the opposite. Radical imagination is not a me phrase. It's a phrase that is well known in academic circles, in people who study social movements, have identified that one thing that all social movements share is radical imagination. And what that means, I think is so beautiful, actually. What it means is that you have a distributed or decentralized community of people who believe in the same thing. And they are living different lives, and they might have different ways to meet that mission. Some might advocate, some might march, some might do behind-the-scenes work. But what they share is this space of radical imagination, and what that means is a space where they build together a world that they want to see. They build a world that doesn't yet exist, but that they want to exist. And then outside of the space of the imagination is where they do actual work, the practical and the tactical. But you have to have that space where you're imagining something really big and ambitious. Right? So Giving Tuesday was a movement for moderate generosity. I don't think it would capture the imaginations of very many people. Right? If our grand vision was like a 1% more generous world.
Right.
That's not very inspiring, right? But if you're going to be part of a movement, then what's the point unless you're imagining something really, really grand?
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes, and I have a cork board in my office with like a couple hundred quotes on them, and most are not as loquacious as this, but it's from Peter Drucker, and it's that people think ideas move mountains. They're wrong. Bulldozers move mountains.
Right.
Right? Ideas just tell the bulldozers where to go. And it's too easy for us to lose sight of that marriage, that intersectionality between innovation and implementation. Can you talk about how you marry those two? Because this is a big thing which has to have implementation behind it. Right? Like, this is the really cool, easy part of this event, folks. There was a million other things that were happening behind the scenes that is about moving mountains and bulldozers. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here, right? It's to always be thinking that's nonprofit leadership, is marrying those two things. It's about having a vision that's going to inspire others and bring them along, and a narrative, and also being able to translate that into the everyday work. And that's the thing we're all always trying to achieve. We say we have the radical imagination and we have the everyday perspiration, right? Because it does take that work. And everyone on my team knows that I am always saying, like, talking and thinking and strategizing is okay. Like, that's great. It needs to happen. But what really needs to happen is the doing and the doing and the doing, right? And the thing that's really inspiring to me is that I find that the leaders within our community, within our global network, who are in the most challenging circumstances and sometimes have the fewest resources are actually usually the best at doing, because circumstances are dire, right? We have leaders in Ukraine, we have leaders in Lebanon, in Venezuela, like in really tough circumstances, and there's no choice but to do. Like, you can't just sit around, strategizing, come out with white paper or a strategic plan in a binder. Like, you have to actually get stuff done. So I think that's the challenge for all of us, right, as nonprofit leaders, is to find that balance, to have the space and time to really think big thoughts and dream big dreams, and then also have the chops to execute, and also, I think, to know where our strengths and weaknesses lie, right? To know the right people that we need to surround ourselves with, because they're the leaders too, and we're not going to get anything done without them.
Yeah. So let's transition for a second. We've been talking about 30,000 level foot things like radical trust and radical imagination and all the radicals. But one of the things that amazes me about Giving Tuesday is that its adherence to ground level data and trend analysis. I mean, that's really what drives it. Can you talk about data and the necessity for it to buttress innovation?
Yeah, so about 50% of our work as an organization. So we're about a 65-person nonprofit at this point, and then we have a couple thousand people in our more distributed global community. But about 50% of our work as a nonprofit is about data now. It's kind of funny how it started. So when I first started working on Giving Tuesday, I'm not a lifelong social sector person. I knew nothing about philanthropy. I happened to work at a nonprofit, the 92nd Street Y, but that was a tax status as far as I knew. I was a cultural programmer. And so here I am working on Giving Tuesday, and I know that people are going to want to know the amount of money that's donated on the day after Giving Tuesday, right?
Of course.
And so, of course, I think, well, what's the common body that has that information? And I can just call them up and say, what was donated yesterday on Giving Tuesday? And they give me some nice round number. Wow, did I get an education about the state of data in this sector? I mean, it's just like in a million places and very obscure and very hoarded. The thing that really broke my heart about it is that the corporate sector is way ahead, or was way ahead, of where the nonprofit sector was with regard to data, because they understood years ago that when you aggregate data and you release the findings of it for all to hold, yes, your competitors might do better, but so will you, right? And so there's really no choice but to do that. The nonprofit sector wasn't doing that at all. So the past, 9 years have really been building relationships and collaborations, and honestly, back to leadership for a second, nothing is more important than relationship building, right? It yields all the good things. So we were able to just slowly build this massive data set of transactional data, academic data, survey data, research data that can tell us all about generosity behaviors, fundraising for sure, but far beyond that, because the interesting thing is most people, so the vast majority of generosity is not deployed toward monetary donations. So if we can understand what motivates all those other generosity behaviors, right, by which I mean generosity participation in things that are not nonprofits like mutual aid, but also things like kindness and mentorship and, right, all of those other deployments of our assets to build a better world, we can do the work that we do as nonprofits even better. So that's really our North Star. And we proceed from the assumption, because we know this to be a fact, and it seems to be in question sometimes. I hear it being questioned a lot. That are people basically generous? Absolutely. They are absolutely generous. And the trends that we're seeing with regard to donations, super concerning, but they are not happening because people are not generous. There's a whole range of factors that are going into it, but that's not one of them. So how can we learn about what motivates and inspires generosity, right, to do our jobs better and to inspire some of that generosity to come in our direction? So data for us is very open and transparent. It is all about relationships. It's all about lifting all boats. When you mentioned I did a fellowship at Stanford, that fellowship was actually all about researching different data models, especially different data collaborative models, because we knew what we wanted to do, we didn't quite know how to build it. And I was like, there's data collaborative for, I'm not kidding, the galvanized steel dipping spoon industry, as well as every other teeny slice of corporate America you could possibly think of. Right? So that's what we're trying to build, the galvanized steel dipping spoon industry data collaborative for those of us who are trying to do good in the world.
Isn't everyone a part of that?
Not that I don't appreciate the galvanized steel dipping spoons. They're great for soup, but
I think there are donors to this event.
But I think we deserve to have all our boats lifted too.
Agreed. So we only have a couple of minutes left, Asha, and I want to thank you so much for being a part of this event, and especially for participating in our fireside chat.
Thank you for having me.
How about the fireplace, folks? I mean, I have two very quick questions before we're going to open it to the audience for some Q&A. The first is, when you were studying politics at Mount Holyoke, did you ever envision running a global social innovation organization?
Of course not.
Okay. So what were you envisioning?
I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. I really didn't. And after Giving Tuesday, I still have no idea what I want to do for a living. What in the world will I possibly do after this? No, I went in publishing after college, and it was really boring. It was just so boring. So one of the things I like about Giving Tuesday is that it really keeps me on my toes. A whole lot of unexpected stuff all the time. And I would guess that a lot of people in this room feel the same way. They like to be busy, like have their hands in lots of different things. That's the way to live.
Yeah. Well,
And to you.
as someone who changed his major 7 times in college, I totally get you there. And secondly, where do you see yourself heading in the future?
That's the problem. I don't know is the answer to that question. But what I'm really hoping is that I can take these learnings, right, about the value of co-ownership and distributed power and seeing yourself as fractal of a larger community. Because that's really what collective action is all about. It's not just about a mass of people doing something together, right? By that definition, you could say that people being trampled at Walmart on Black Friday is collective action, right? It's not. Collective action is really about seeing yourself as being part of something bigger than yourself. And so being able to take those lessons and to be able to maybe work somewhere that is really, really old school and try to bring some of those values in so that we're not trying to keep power close to the center, which is how we're all taught to do, right? But instead to push it away as much as possible, which is a huge challenge and a huge risk and the most rewarding work you can do.
100%. Asha, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Please, everyone, can have a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
So we have some staff with microphones, so if anyone has any questions for our morning keynote speaker, Asha Curran, please raise your hand, let us know. Let's do a couple here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Giving Tuesday it's overwhelmingly successful. When did you know that, or when did it strike you? Because it seems like, because I know the 92nd Street, why I learned to swim there as a child. When did you know, or when did you say, wait a minute, I just meant for this to be 5 blocks. When did it hit you, and what was it that you said, I think this is bigger?
It's a great question. I think right away, like literally the first year. So we made a really important decision. That I think you're all nonprofit leaders will really relate to how unusual this decision is. We started discussing the idea in late August of 2012 and had the first Give Tuesday in November of 2012. That was for the 92nd Street Y. That's a pretty short time frame. The more usual way to do that would have been to, have committee meetings about it. Lots and lots of committee meetings. And then like a year later, launch it into the world, probably with a completely different name, a completely different idea, an amalgam of everybody's feedback. And we didn't do that. It was absolutely a process of co-creation. So many people worked on that first Giving Tuesday, and we were really, really humble about it, not falsely either. We didn't know what we were doing. So we had meetups, and we gathered tons of ideas and feedback, but it wasn't in that kind of typical institutional committee process way. But then got it out into the world, right? So the Silicon Valley concept of a minimum viable product, that's what Giving Tuesday was that first year. And right away, I saw a bunch of nonprofit campaigns, and more importantly, or more surprisingly, just a whole lot of individuals posting about it, including people I felt like I knew really well, posting about causes and issues that were close to their hearts that I had no idea, and why those causes and issues were close to their hearts. And I think I realized people don't talk about giving that much. People don't talk about generosity. They'll share what they had for lunch. They'll share the sneakers that they just bought. They'll share the length of the run they just went on. but they really don't talk about giving. And so the fact that right from the beginning it created this space for people to talk about generosity in what was then the beginning of a public square, being social media, was like the first indication. And even that first year, we were only working with a couple of giving platforms, but they reported like a 50% increase in giving. So I think I realized right away it was a really life-changing experience that first year. And then obviously the growth every year after that. Then there was a point in the middle, in the 3-4 year mark, where I was like, I'm doing 2 full-time jobs, because Giving Tuesday was becoming its own year-round global experience, and then I was also doing this other job. So that was another moment. Yeah.
Other questions?
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Brannon. I'm founder of Sister to Sister International. We're a nonprofit that empowers Black women, girls. We have been very involved with collective impact. That's the term we use, and we have 4 pillars, and we have community partners, et cetera. Let me just stop for a moment, though, first and foremost, and say congratulations to you, because Giving Tuesday is absolutely phenomenal.
Oh,
it really is.
Thank you.
It really is.
Because of all of you.
It really is, and we look forward to it every year, and it gets better and better.
Oh, God.
So my question for you is, in terms of your team, we all know the team makes the dream work, and certainly we have a fabulous team. But I'm very curious to hear from you. What do you look for as you hire people and as you engage them, have them become a part of your team? Thank you.
What a great question. I mean, how could we talk about leadership without talking about this incredibly crucial issue? First of all, thank you for the work you do. Your organization sounds amazing, and I'm really glad you've had good luck with Give Tuesday, because even after 10 years, nothing makes me happier than hearing that. So what do I look for? Great question. So I'm kind of a strange hirer. I tend to hire people rather than roles. So if I come across someone in the world that is amazing, I'll want to create a role for them, because I know how hard it is to find that person when you happen to be looking for it. So I have to admit, I've hired people and I've created a role around them. I've also hired people. So one of the first questions I ask people when I'm interviewing is, tell me about your first jobs, because I really love to hear about someone who was working babysitting or retail or service, like from a young age, because I'm Gen X and I did that, and that just makes me feel like somebody has a strong work ethic. And I'll ask a lot of questions that sort of allow me to get the sense that person is going to start coloring outside the lines as soon as they get firm in their own role, and I really love that. I really love when I hire someone and they're doing their job well, but then they start doing other things as well. And then maybe they end up in a completely different role in the organization and I have to backfill their first role. But I don't care, because it's so nice to see people growing into their strengths. And then I think this is important for us. I don't know that it's important for everybody. We're a virtual organization from pre-pandemic because we're global. We have staff in 30 different countries. And so we don't have any offices and we're fully remote. We have a lot of things we do to try to strengthen our culture and have a lot of in-person touch points. But we are remote and people do need to be fairly self-directed. So I think I've learned to be more straightforward with people they're not going to be set up for success if they're the kind of person who's really only going to be productive if they're in an office 9 to 5 every day. I don't think most people want to be in an office 9 to 5 every day at this point, so that it's not like a massive challenge. But I think that part is really important for us.
So we have time for one more question.
I could keep going and going.
And I would love for you to keep going. Somebody? Yep, I think. There we go.
Hello, hi. My name is Jasenia Tejada from the Child Care Council of Westchester. So my question is, how do you maintain positive relationships with your global partners?
Oh, I love that question. So I always talk about, has anybody here read Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown? I highly recommend it as a book, and I don't generally go around recommending strategy books, but the concept of emergence is that the most important things within any community, and not only human communities, but like communities in nature, happen between the parts, right? So like the famous Aristotle saying of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. The most important thing that happens in any community, or I would even posit in any organization, is not the function of each individual person, but the interplay between them, right? So we have just a very, very strong focus on relationships and on the things that we talk about that are important out in our mission, right? Kindness and warmth and respect and transparency. My experience in my own life is that organizations don't always live those values. They might say them externally, but they don't always live them internally. We really try to make those our North Star for our communities. And so along with really trusting them to get their job done, there's a really strong ethos of mutual support and warmth and mutual accountability. We care about each other as people, right? We are, we have many, many WhatsApp groups, including one that is all of us on one WhatsApp group, and there's always just a ton of support being thrown out for the people in countries who are undergoing specific challenges, which seems like a different one every day, every week. As well as, new baby pictures, and we just got married, and things like that, right? Like that for us, people are people, and not just representatives of the campaigns, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you again, Asha, for being part of our event today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure, Tom. Thank you all. Thank you all for doing the important work you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, get out this way. And please stay with us. We'll be right back in a moment.